I call this meeting on public safety, finance, and policy back to order. Hope everybody had a nice break. We are going to move to House File 4446. It's Representative Johnson's bill. And the motion is going to be to lay this bill over. Is that your motion, Representative Johnson?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is my motion.
All right, and your bill is before us. There are no amendments, so please go ahead and tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. House File 4446 is an important bill that deals with survivor benefits for public safety officers who die in the line of duty from exposure-related cancers. It has been established that firefighters and other public safety officers, because of the work that they undertake, have a proportionally greater number of cancer-related deaths than the general population. Studies from NIOSH, or the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, along with many other medical studies, have consistently shown that certain types of cancer are more prevalent in public safety officers than the public, and that's why we are really pushing this bill today. The other important aspects, there's three things I want to hit on with House File 4446. First, this law recognizes the true risk that public safety officers and their families are taking for this career or this service. Second, it aligns Minnesota with the new federal law that addresses these cancers. And third, having this prerequisite certification from the state is a major factor in the federal determination of those benefits. So with that, I'd pass it off to my testifier.
All right, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Scott Vadnais, President of the Minnesota Professional Firefighters. On December 18, 2025, the federal Honoring Our Heroes Act was enacted. The United States Senator Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat from Minnesota, Kevin Kramer, a Republican from North Dakota, sponsored this bill. This law expands access to federal support for families of first responders who die from fire service-related cancer. The International Association of Firefighters supported this bipartisan legislation, which was triggered by a case that arose right here in Minnesota. Mike Piter was a 15-year firefighter who worked for both the St. Paul Fire Department and Maple Grove Fire Department. Over his career, he went on over 8,000 emergency calls, 3,000 which were fire runs. On Valentine's Day 2020, Mike was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. Before this diagnosis, Mike was perfectly healthy and had no family history of cancer. AML is a particularly aggressive form of leukemia, and even though Mike had advanced treatment through the University of Minnesota, he died just over 6 months later on August 26, 2020. His death shocked the firefighter community, and more significantly, it was an absolute tragedy for his wife, Julie Piter, Mike's and his two children, Matthew and Megan. Dr. Grace Holton, Mike's treating physician at the University of Minnesota, reviewed the case that had just been completed, which found a very strong link between firefighters' work histories and deaths caused by AML. One study found that firefighters were as much as twice as likely to experience AML as the general population. The study found that the risk of cancer from AML was particularly acute with firefighters of Mike's profile, younger firefighters who engaged in multiple emergency runs. There are other studies that have also shown the prevalence of AML in firefighters. A suspected cause is due to the residual benzene from diesel fuel used in our fire engines. In 2022, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, classified firefighting as a Group 1 carcinogen to humans. This means there's sufficient evidence that firefighting itself causes cancer, just to have the job. On October 27, 2021, Public Safety Commissioner John Herring determined that Mike Piter's death was directly related to his 15-year employment as a firefighter and awarded Captain Piter's family the Public Safety Officer benefit under Minnesota Statute 299A. This was the very first PSOB award, and there has only been the only award of this kind in recognizing cancer-related death in Minnesota. However, Minnesota acknowledged something that all firefighters and public safety officers have known for years. These are very dangerous jobs. And while Minnesota acknowledged this awful problem one time, the federal government did not recognize it at all. With the impetus from this case, St. Paul IFF Local 21 and Julie Piter brought this matter before Senator Klobuchar. She introduced the Federal Honoring Our Fallen Heroes Act and recognized certain work exposure cancer-related deaths as line-of-duty deaths. House File 4446, the bill before you, would align Minnesota with the new federal law for presumed workplace cancer deaths to make survivors of public safety officers who die from those cancers eligible for Minnesota public safety officer death in the line of duty benefits. This would be a meaningful and important step to recognize these deaths for what they truly are, a line of duty death and a sacrifice made protecting society. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just say thank you for that very compelling testimony. And I, as you were talking to, just wanted to reflect on the fact that we had that tragic fire in White Bear Lake recently as well, and thinking about all of the things that our first responders have to experience. And so just want to acknowledge that and appreciate you.
Thank you.
Questions from members? Chair Novotny? Nothing? Okay. Closing remarks, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it relatively brief, but for a long time when we think of firefighter line of duty deaths, we thought about fires and collapses and people running out of air and those real traumatic events or car crashes or all those types of things. And we've done a lot to change that. We've changed the equipment that we have changed the training. There's a reason firefighters don't ride around on the tailboards of trucks anymore, and they're in seats with seat belts and all those types of things. And we've done that to reduce the number of deaths. And along with that, we've acknowledged and honored the sacrifice as a line of duty death when it does occur to make sure that those families are not left behind. And then years later, we started to realize that heart attacks, strokes, suicide, things like that were claiming a lot of our firefighters. So we did things to try and change that, different policy changes, different health and wellness initiatives. But we still are not able to get that to zero, but we have worked in the right direction. But we also acknowledge those deaths and honor those as line of duty deaths and make sure those families are not left behind. As President Vadnais testified, the simple act of being a firefighter is a Group 1 carcinogen. Just the job, just the job itself is labeled as that dangerous as a carcinogen. And we've realized today that cancer is killing a lot of our firefighters throughout our communities. And we've done things to try and reduce that. We've banned flame retardants. We have banned PFAS use and tried to limit that. We've funded gear washers to make sure that we can wash those poisons out of our gear. We've invested in exhaust systems to get that diesel exhaust out of our stations. The goal of all of this is to reduce the number of firefighters that die every year. But we also know we will probably not ever get that to zero. And House File 4446, we can honor and acknowledge those sacrifices as what they are, line of duty deaths, and make sure that those families are not left behind. So I appreciate everybody's support, and if folks have questions as we move forward, I'm happy to answer them too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Johnson renews his motion to lay over House File 4446. Thanks again. Next, we're going to move to Representative Norris's bill, House File 1597. All right, and I will move to re-refer House File 1597 to the Committee on Ways and Means. And I'll also move the A3 amendment. Representative Norris, welcome back.
Thank you.
And is there anything to explain with the A3 amendment? It looks just like a language change.
Chair Moller, yeah, the A3 amendment just swaps out, it's a recommendation from DPS, swaps out one member of the task force for another member.
All right, any discussion to the A3 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The A3 amendment is adopted. Please tell us about your bill as amended.
Thank you, Chair Moller and members of the committee. It's great to be back with you again. I am pleased to present this bipartisan bill alongside my constituent, Alexi Stefani. Alexi came to me describing the horrific hit and run incident that she suffered. But she didn't just come with a story. She came with a solution. Yellow alerts are a form of public alert system to help law enforcement track down those who commit hit and run incidents that result in serious injury or death. They're similar to Amber Alerts for abductions. They've been implemented successfully in states like Colorado and California. Considering that less than 10% of hit-and-run drivers are arrested and successfully prosecuted in criminal court, this legislation is desperately needed. We've consulted with a variety of experts at MnDOT and the Department of Public Safety about this idea, and we agreed it makes sense to start with a task force that's established by this bill. In fact, this follows a similar path that Amber Alerts followed when we implemented those in our state. The task force would make recommendations to this committee on aspects like analyzing the systems used in other states, determining the types of hit-and-run accidents that should trigger the use of an alert, and establishing the standard form and method for providing alerts to the public. And the best part is we got the fiscal note back, and there's no net cost to this bill. A hit-and-run crash happens every 43 seconds in the United States, so Minnesota should not wait to implement this important public safety tool. And with that, I am proud to turn it over to my constituent, Alexi Stefani, to share her story.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin your testimony.
Thank you so much. Good evening, members of the Public Safety Committee. My name is Alexi Stefani, and I'm a hit-and-run constituent. The implementation of yellow alerts in Minnesota is very important to me and would greatly benefit our community. Oftentimes, we don't realize how serious something is until it happens to us. On the run from law enforcement, a driver ran a neighborhood stop sign and collided with my vehicle's driver's side at approximately 65 miles per hour. My car then hit a concrete streetlight, a stop sign, went through a yard, and finally collided with a house. Although a demolished car remained next to mine, no driver could be accurately identified for prosecution. After reading my no prosecution letter, I knew that I wanted to dedicate my life to improving my community. I enrolled in law school, and I will graduate this spring. I published in the Star Tribune about the importance of yellow alerts, and I reached out to Representative Norris, who has helped me bring this idea to you today. Because of this accident, I missed a month of school and months of college athletics. The fear I had to overcome just to enter a vehicle to attend my appointments is something that I can't forget. Giving up my senior season of college soccer because of my head injury is something that my younger self would never have imagined. Returning to campus, I struggled to find my classrooms and to remember the names of my professors, all while the driver at fault walked free. There needs to be a change, and a yellow alert system is the first step in the right direction, and it should be implemented in Minnesota. It wasn't the shattered window, the cuts, or the bone bruises that hurt me the most. It was the lack of justice that cut far deeper. My father raised me to understand that life is not about what happens to me, but about how I react to those things. Well, Dad, this is my reaction. Thank you so much for your time and for the responsibility that you carry in protecting our community.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony and I'm really sorry that that horrific incident happened and there was no justice in your case, but really appreciate all that you're doing now to make sure that doesn't happen to the next person. So thank you so much. And you can maybe run for the legislature someday. Of course, when Matt's gone. Yeah. And, we always need more lawyers in the legislature, right? So it doesn't look like anybody else signed up to testify, so we can move to member discussion. Anything? Oh, Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. I just wanted to say thank you for bringing this forward. My family owns a small business, a bicycle business, and they are avid cyclists, and 2 of them have been involved in hit-and-run accidents, and it really does impact your life in a way that you cannot anticipate. And you are looking around the corner every second, not just for cars, but also because you're wondering who's the person who did this and got away with it. So I appreciate this. They're in Hawaii, so I wish we could bring it there. But hey, let's start with Minnesota. Thanks.
Thank you. And we're talking here because the motion is going to change actually for the better. We're going to change the motion to go to the general register because this ends up is cost neutral. It doesn't need an extra stop in Waze. And so that will be what we do when we get ready to vote. Any other discussion to the bill? Chair Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Moller, and testifier, thank you for being here. This has nothing the remarks I'm going to say have nothing to do with you and Representative Norris. Look, this is just another fiscal note that is on fiscal notes on fiscal notes. I've tried to get a silver alert for years and years, and the fiscal note blows it away. And I know this is a task force, not actually establishing it yet, but just another thing where everything can be absorbed if it comes from the right representative. I'm going to let your bill go through because I think it will make a difference. I just wish that there was some reciprocity on that. And I'm not reflecting on anyone in this committee, but the silver alert is something that has been showed to work for years in a state like Florida, where they have obviously a larger elderly population. But I'll say it just one more time. If it comes from my side of the office, it's got a huge fiscal note. If it comes from the other side, zero. Thank you, Chair.
Closing remarks, Representative Norris.
Thanks, Chair Moller, and thanks to the members of the committee for your support for this. And I just want to, again, commend Alexi for the fantastic work she's done on this and hoping that we can continue that fantastic work together.
Okay, so again, we're changing the motion to re-refer House File 1597 as amended to the General Register. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. Thanks again. Next up is House File 3155, Representative Tabke. And I believe your motion is to recommend that House File 3155 be placed on the General Register.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
And you do have an A1. It looks pretty simple. Anything you'd like to explain about the A1?
No.
All right, any discussion to the A1? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The A1 amendment is adopted. Please tell us about your bill as amended.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. House File 3155 is a bipartisan work to help with gift card theft. So what happens, this is adding language to the organized theft organized retail theft that we passed a year or two ago. I forget exactly when it was, but what this would do is, well, what is happening is that in stores, gift cards are being taken and then tampered with, so they get the information off those gift cards, and then they're put back on the shelf. And so from there, someone else unknowingly goes and purchases and gets that gift card, purchases that gift card, and the people who tampered with it before then know that it's activated, and so then they take the money off of that gift card because they have the information for it. And so these gift cards, and there's currently no recourse for it because the gift card is only valued at the cost of the value of the plastic. It's not the value of the gift card itself. And so this bill would work together to fix these issues as they come forward. And I have a couple testifiers, Madam Chair.
All right, great. We've got Bruce Newstad and Josh Percola. If you want to both make your way to the testifiers table, and you are already. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and begin.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Chair Novotny, my name is Bruce Newstead with Minnesota Retailers. I work with retailers of all sizes across the state. I just want to thank Representative Tabke for his leadership on House File 3155 and Representative Perryman for her support as well. I want to start off by just being really clear. I think Tabke did a good job, but what this bill does and what it does not do, what it doesn't do is take care of those consumer scams where somebody tricks somebody into buying a gift card to paying a fake utility bill. This bill does not address that, although that is a serious issue that should be addressed. This bill targets organized, sophisticated criminal activity that's happening in our stores. As Representative Tabke said, criminals are taking unloaded gift cards off racks, tampering to capture the card number and the PIN, and then putting them back on the shelf. Then they use sophisticated technology to track when those cards are activated, and they instantaneously drain the funds, sometimes within minutes. The result is that consumers lose money, retailers absorb costs, and trust in the marketplace erodes. Under current law, as Representative Tabke said, if law enforcement stops someone with hundreds of these compromised cards, the charges are often limited just to the value of the plastic because the card has not yet been loaded. That doesn't reflect the reality of this crime that happens today on an enterprise criminal network level. But I do want to say retailers are not just standing still letting this happen. We're trying to do what we can. We're investing in training, technology, innovation, and education, and partnerships with law enforcement. Unfortunately, this crime is bigger than what a single retailer or a group of retailers can do to solve it. Frankly, we need your help. House File 3155 closes the gap by aligning gift card fraud with Minnesota's organized retail crime law. It ensures that law enforcement has the right tools to go after organized networks, not individuals or a bad actor, a single bad actor. This is really a targeted, practical fix that matches the sophistication of the crime. So I want to thank you for your consideration this evening. And Chair Moller, if you'll indulge us, Josh Percola from the Coon Rapids Police Department would love to tell a little bit of a story as well.
Great. Yes, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself, detective, and begin.
Thank you. My name is Josh Percola. I'm a police officer with the Coon Rapids Police Department, currently assigned to investigations focusing on organized retail crime. I also serve as the vice president of the Minnesota Organized Retail Crime Association. In April of 2024, we were contacted by a retailer reporting a drastic increase in suspicious gift card activity. Suspects were taking large numbers of unpurchased gift cards, altering them, and returning them to store shelves. In a single day, they would visit 15 or more stores across the metro area. One retailer alone reported a loss exceeding $350,000. What began as a retail theft case turned into a 7-month investigation that uncovered a transnational criminal organization operating here in Minnesota. The suspects removed security features from gift cards, recorded the numbers and pins, then reassembled the gift cards to look untouched. Those numbers were then shared and sold. Once a customer purchased a loaded gift card, the funds were immediately drained. Through surveillance and coordination with retailers, we identified 13 individuals and 2 residences used as operational hubs. A total of 6 law enforcement agencies and over 80 state, local, and federal officers executed search warrants, and we recovered over 16,000 altered or in-progress gift cards, along with evidence of broader fraud, including fraudulent bank account information tied to other cases in other states. Despite the scale of this operation, current law only allows us to charge misdemeanor theft because the cards had not yet been loaded with money. But the real victims are the consumers. I spoke with a victim who gave a gift card to her child's teacher to purchase classroom supplies to find the balance was $0. Another victim gave a $200 gift card to a struggling mother who was unable to buy diapers and formula when the card was declined. The embarrassment each victim felt was something they will never forget. This bill would give law enforcement the tools to address this crime at its true scale and hold offenders accountable before more Minnesotans are harmed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We did not have anybody from the public sign up to testify. Do we have any questions or discussion from members? No? It's a quiet bunch tonight. Chair Novotny? No? All right. Closing remarks, Representative Tabke.
Thank you very much to Representative Perryman, who's here helping out with this bill and making sure that we have a lot of great support for it. So I appreciate everyone, including Bruce and the retailers and all the folks that this will help. So thank you.
All right. Representative Tabke renews the motion to recommend that House File 3155 as amended be placed on the general register. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Representative Greenman, you're up next with House File 4437. And as you're making your way there, I believe your motion is to re-refer House File 4437 to the Commerce, Finance, and Policy Committee.
That's right, Madam Chair.
Okay, and you do have the DE2 amendment. Did you want to explain the amendment or adopt it first? What's your preference?
I'm happy to just briefly explain. This was a result of working with nonpartisan staff to make sure that the bill language worked and put it in the shape that I want it.
Okay, great. Any questions to the DE2 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The DE2 amendment is adopted. Please tell us about your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House File 4437 bans the hosting, the operating, and the advertising of prediction market gambling in Minnesota. The regulation of gambling has long been considered the province of the state, of tribes, and of local governments, and this bill preserves that authority. So what are prediction markets? Prediction markets are platforms not regulated by the state that allow people to bet on the outcome of future events. The markets are like the ones operated by Kalshi, by Polymart, by Crypto.com that set up a series of binary contracts, and people can anonymously bet on them and they get paid out based on the outcome of the event. For example, this morning I checked on Polymarket. You can bet on will China invade Taiwan by the end of 2026. You can bet on any number of things that Congress has the authority to regulate, and you can bet on the outcome of any NCAA tournament game and thousands of more things, including the weather, what people will say on late night TV, et cetera. The platforms make money by charging bettors a fee for bringing together users of the opposite side of a bet, and many platforms also operate clearinghouses to settle bets and participate in the betting with their so-called trading arms. What this has amounted to is an explosion of gambling in the last year without the guardrails and the safeguards that states across the country have been putting around gambling for years. In Minnesota, similar to states around the country, it's been tightly regulated. State and tribal regulators have worked for decades to make sure that there are transparent and effective systems of licensing and legalized gambling. And since I've been in the legislature, there's been a robust conversation about the merits of whether we should expand sports betting in Minnesota, and if we did, how we would regulate it to ensure that customers, that it protects consumer protections, responsible gaming measures, and also includes efforts to deal with problem gambling. And while there are members that are on both sides of this issue about whether we should expand sports betting that are working on this bill and that are in our body, there seems to be broad agreement that whether Minnesota does it and how we do it and how we regulate it, that probably should be our decision to make. These prediction markets circumvent our authority and our gambling laws, and they functionally create an unregulated sports book and a way to bet on almost anything. And they're doing this without the protections like requiring you to be 21 to gamble, without anti-money laundering protections, and without the issues of and the ways to address problem gambling. In addition to the circumventing of those laws, it also opens up to a whole set of things of people betting on anything from elections to wars to disasters. They allow, they create a number of concerns, including ethics concerns, but also they're vulnerable to cheating and manipulation by anonymous insiders. We've recently seen large suspicious bets on world events that have raised concerns, even for those markets, about people with non-public information betting and manipulating the markets. There's also worry that as these markets grow, they could actually start to influence world events, that people would place money, and then if they're in the position to actually influence the outcome, may influence the outcome one way or the other. They create the kind of shadowy financial self-dealing that threatens to corrupt a lot of things we care about: sports, policymaking, politics, and more. And Minnesota isn't alone in trying to deal with this. This is red states and blue states are all trying to bring some mechanisms of enforcement and protect their state's ability to regulate gambling. There's states pursuing policy, there are states pursuing enforcement actions, there's lawsuits, and there's legislation. So what does this bill do? This bill defines a prediction market as a system that allows consumers to place a wage on a future outcome of a specified event that is not determined or affected by the performance of the parties of the contract. And then it lists a set of things like sports and games of dice, war, natural disasters, emergencies, elections, et cetera. You can see it in the bill. And then it makes it a felony to create, to host, to operate the prediction market, or to advertise or market that kind of market that are outside the legal parameters. It includes safeguards in the bill that first require cease and desist notice. So if you are doing this kind of behavior, you'll get a cease and desist notice before it becomes a felony. And it also includes exceptions that preserve the current framework of what the legislature in the past has decided is legal and acceptable within that framework. So that, Madam Chair, is the bill.
Thank you. And I just confirmed, I think there's a fiscal note that's being prepared. And it is making, this bill is making a stop in commerce.
That's
the motion.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. And you do have 2 testifiers, and I believe actually one of them had to leave with an emergency. So we have Leah Patton here. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and begin.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Leah Patton. I'm Executive Director of the Joint Religious Legislative Coalition, and I'm here to testify in favor of House File 4437. So the Joint Religious Legislative Coalition is a statewide advocacy group formed through the partnership of our 3 sponsoring faith organizations, the Minnesota Catholic Conference, the Jewish Community Relations Council of Minnesota and the Dakotas, and the Minnesota Council of Churches. So as people of faith, we advocate alongside our neighbors of different religious traditions and backgrounds to address poverty, uphold the dignity of overlooked communities, and mitigate societal harm. So online gambling is not legal in Minnesota. However, prediction markets offer a loophole for unregulated online gambling and sports betting in Minnesota. Trading on these markets can take place on an incredible range of outcomes, which Representative Greenman touched on, from whether a ceasefire between Iran and the United States will be reached by March 31st, and to whether the price of a can of Arizona iced tea will increase this year. The ability to bet on basically any outcome, combined with the online nature of these markets, provides nearly unlimited opportunities to wager and lose significant amounts of money. And this presents a significant danger to those at risk of developing compulsive gambling behaviors, particularly young people. Recent studies show that approximately 6% of college students have a serious gambling problem. Prediction market companies understand how susceptible young people, specifically young men, are to falling prey to this thinly disguised form of online gambling. Companies specifically target platforms and spaces frequented by teenagers and young adults, like online live streaming platforms and social media, for advertising. There are examples of prediction market companies contracting underage influencers to advertise their markets to young audiences. Numerous lawsuits and regulatory actions have identified the predatory practices of these markets, and we know who they're preying upon. The most well-known prediction market, Kalshi, recently decided that they plan to block athletes, athletes, coaches, and officials from trading on their sports. This move is essentially a confession that prediction markets themselves are not confused regarding the services they provide, online gambling and sports betting. Minnesotans depend on elected officials to determine what regulations are needed on gambling in Minnesota, not the CEOs of multi-billion-dollar trading companies with essentially no accountability for the steep social costs their platforms impose on our communities. We urge you to vote in favor of House File 4437. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for your testimony. We didn't have any other members of the public sign up to testify, so we can move to member discussion. Representative Whitty.
Representative.
Oh, can you use your microphone?
Representative Greenman, thank you for bringing this bill forward. One question, what does it do with our March Madness brackets? It's gone around the House before, so I'm just curious.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And unfortunately, it cannot save your bracket. But it does exempt out that private, that is already currently in law. It preserves that protection for individual and personal brackets. It can't save your top pick, but it can save our ability to do it together.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? I can't tell if Representative Hudson, that was like go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I myself was unclear as to whether or not I actually wanted to say something, but
we've reached that point of the evening.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Greenman. It's late and it's deadline week, so we're all feeling a little spicy. So I'll just cut to the chase. So if we were to pass this, obviously the tribal nations can do whatever they want under their sovereignty. So are we actually preventing this activity from taking place in Minnesota, or are we limiting it just to the tribal nations?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill would not change anything about the way that we have over decades built up and regulated gambling, both as it relates to the tribal compacts and as it, all the other things that we allow on track pari-mutuel betting. And as somebody who is not an expert on gambling, I am actually a opponent of sports betting, but there are people working on both sides. I don't exactly know all the ins and outs, but what I do know is this is about protecting the status quo. So that, and I think that that's how a lot of states see it, that there's been a lot of policy decisions made both in our relationships with our sovereign tribal partners and also our sovereign tribal nations, and also, age limits. Like I think that there's pretty much uniform agreement that you shouldn't be able to do this unless you're 21, but on these markets, you're 18. Or some of the safeguards in terms of anonymous betting that we're seeing on these markets, that's not sort of a current function of our gambling code.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess I would ask nonpartisan if they would be willing to comment on their interpretation of whether or not the passage of this bill would have any binding impact on our tribal nations here in Minnesota.
Representative Johnson, or Mr. Johnson.
Representative Johnson. Representative Moller, members, gambling is actually highly regulated, and it's regulated under the federal law. It's the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, IGRA. Under IGRA, if something is legal to be done within the state for all people, then it must be legal to be done on the tribal land as well. However, outside of that, there are different types of gaming, type 1, 2, and 3. This type of gaming, like sports betting, would be a type 1 level of gaming, presumably. And type 1 is highly regulated and is subject to both state regulation and federal approval. So while this is untested as far as I know, and there may be other arguments, there's a strong argument that it must follow under the regulatory process that is both approval through the compacting with the state as well as federal approval of that compacts. So there would at least be an ability to challenge a tribal's ability to offer a prediction market.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure, with all due respect to Mr. Johnson, I'm not sure I understand the point any better. But suffice it to say, I do think it's worth considering whether or not the intent of this bill would actually be manifest if it was passed. So thank you.
Further discussion? Representative Tabke.
Thank you very much, Chair Moller. I just want to say thank you to Representative Greenman for bringing this bill. This is I think we don't yet understand exactly how bad this prediction market piece is in our communities. It's I've heard from parents in Shakopee that have middle school kids who've lost thousands of dollars, and they have a hard time telling their parents what's going on and where things are at. And so this is completely unregulated, tested waters that we absolutely need to have regulation and understanding as to how it works, so that we can both so that we can protect people and our citizens and from this and the marketing that comes along with it. As anybody is watching March Madness sees lots and lots of ads for these kinds of things, and it feels perfectly normal and like what everybody does, but it is a really dangerous thing to be going down without having any guardrails on it. So thank you for bringing this.
Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I guess I am echoing what Representative Tabke said. Thank you, Representative Greenman, for bringing this forward. I think one of the things that I didn't hear folks touch on as much was the ethical concerns about making predictions about whether or not we're going to war or another mass shooting happens and things like that. I mean, as a person who is not particularly religious, I think there's some real ethical concerns about creating a system that allows people to make bets on whether or not terrible things happen to other people. And I think it's something that, as a parent, I definitely want to steer my kids away from, but because it's so all-consuming and prevalent, it's very difficult to. So I appreciate this. It absolutely needs to be regulated. It needs to be regulated, period. Full stop.
Okay. Chair Novotny.
Thank you, Chair Moller. Representative Whitty, the difference would be vetting on the office March Madness bracket and someone betting on a fan attacking someone at the March Madness. I can't affect the brackets, but it would be able to affect somebody, if I had enough money on it. Not that I would, but, someone could make that bet and make that thing. So this is why I'm a yes on this bill. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Before you close too, I just want to thank Mr. Johnson too for your House research summary, very good summary about prediction markets. So thank you for that. Closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I also want to thank Mr. Johnson, not Representative Johnson, for just this. This is, I think, a new and growing area that a lot of states are working on, and we spent a lot of time trying to make sure that the language is right, but it's going to commerce. And so for folks on both sides, if you are interested in this, I'd love to continue working with you on it. In Congress right now, there was actually a question of whether one of these prediction markets was based on something that they had control over and people were betting in it. So could you imagine if there was a vote on whether we would pass this bill or not on Polymarket and you wouldn't know who was voting on either side? And so I think that's the kind of behavior we're trying to prevent. It's not good for the work we do in our public trust. It's also just not good to have that kind of unregulated speculation and gambling. So with that, Madam Chair, I really appreciate this conversation and the questions. I don't think they were too spicy. And I'd ask for a green vote or your vote.
All right, Representative Greenman renews the motion to re-refer House File 4437 as amended to the Commerce, Finance, and Policy Committee. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. All right, Vice Chair Feist is going to take the gavel. Like catch up.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
Great. So the next bill on the agenda is House File 3871. This is Chair Moller's bill. We are going to lay this bill over. Chair Moller, your bill is before us. You do have an author's amendment. Would you like to move the A2 amendment to get the bill in the shape you'd like to present it in?
I would, Madam Chair, and if it's okay, Representative Curran, this was actually a bill that she presented today in the Judiciary Committee. It's also an agency bill, and if it's all right, she can walk through what the A2 amendment does.
Great. Representative Curran.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chair. So this is essentially amending in, again, House File 3870 that we heard in Judiciary today. The bulk of that bill has to do with information through the Office of Justice programs and just ensuring that the data there has adequate protections, and then also updates some of the terminology to use current terminology that we use in case of battered women. That's old language. We now use domestic abuse victims. So that's another substantial update, and the bulk of the bill is updating terminology.
Great. Thank you so much, Representative Curran. Is there any discussion to the amendment? Seeing no discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The A2 amendment is adopted. Chair Moller, please tell us about your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So House File 3871 is a BCA policy bill designed to address some of the critical gaps in Minnesota law that inhibit law enforcement's ability to prevent child sexual abuse and exploitation of children. This bill clarifies the jurisdiction for CSAM prosecutions to prevent delays in prosecution of these offenses. It also clarifies that when law enforcement is executing a search warrant in CSAM investigations, they have the authority to conduct an on-scene preview of any digital media they find, similar to being able to open like a locked cabinet in a search warrant. And then finally, this bill contains several provisions designed to address the proliferation of childlike sex dolls. We've had some discussions about that in the past, And there is a helpful one-pager in your packets, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Evans to describe it in more detail.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair. Superintendent Evans, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Drew Evans. I'm the superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. As Chair Moller outlined, this bill is before you for consideration related to some of our work that we do at the BCA. We have a team in our predatory crimes section that addresses the exploitation of children online, child sexual abuse material, and then we also command the ICAC, or the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, which combats child sexual abuse across Minnesota, child sexual abuse material in particular, with approximately 100 affiliates statewide. Some of what we're doing with this here today is addressing some of the gaps that we've identified. As Chair Moller noted, we have encountered some situations where prosecutors have faced some challenges when it comes to venue, and so this is providing a clarification. And what we mean by that is it makes it clear that where the child sexual abuse material is recovered, where it may have originated, where the individual might reside, similar to some other provisions for venue, that it's clear that the prosecutor can charge really in the jurisdiction where the crime is being investigated. And so there's been some situations where we haven't been able to do that, so it's providing that clarification. The second piece, I apologize, when it's working is the on-scene previews, just to provide clarification what that means. In this particular process. Typically in the past, we would send a team of digital evidence investigators out with our traditional investigators that are doing investigations and executing search warrants, and they would examine the items as we're recovering them at the scene. As you can imagine, at this point in time, we recover dozens of materials in terms of actual digital mediums that we're looking at. That team would be able to actually examine those items on scene, be able to identify them and triage them, so we're examining the right number of items when it comes into our evidence laboratory at the BCA. This is done only with the search warrant. This provision is not providing any further rights or ability for us to do that on scene. It would be done with the search warrant, but providing clarification to the judges that one search warrant would be able to be used for both of those, and then a second search warrant to do further examinations once they are back. As Chair Moller noted, this has been before you before on childlike sex dolls. We are continuing to seize these as part of our investigative activities. They're just like what they sound as we're seeing them primarily in these CSAM investigations. They're anatomically correct dolls for individuals as they engage in sexual fantasies of assaulting children. As part of that, we have tried to make some adjustments this year, looking at the penalties, trying to see if that would make this more palatable for members to see as this moves through. And then the last one that wasn't referenced, but it was in kind of at the end, is a duress defense for individuals that are victims of human trafficking. This mirrors federal legislation that was recently passed for the federal component of this, and it was a bipartisanly supported bill in Congress as it moved through there. What this would allow for is victims of sex trafficking in particular, that they would have the defense available to them of duress. I'll give you an example that helps illustrate this. We recently were, in the last couple of years, we're investigating human trafficking where individuals of sex trafficking would be sex trafficked, in the evenings by their trafficker. During the day, they were required to go out by their trafficker and commit things like identity theft, steal credit cards, do different crimes related to that. If they did not do that, they would be subject to abuse by that trafficker. And so this provides them that defense. And what we have found is it's more difficult for people to escape being trafficked when they are convicted of various crimes related to that. So that duress defense would be available to them. And as noted, it mirrors really federal law that has been recently passed nationally. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent. Was Director Babine going to also testify? Or
I think she can be available for questions if you have those about the amendment.
Great. Thank you so much. And we did not have any members of the public sign up to testify, so we will move on to member discussion. And it looks like Representative Hollins? No? Oh, sorry, Representative Pinto, that was old.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Moller, for this bill, and thank you, Superintendent. There's a lot of really good material in here. I think will make a big difference for the fight against child sexual abuse material and those involved in these just horrible, horrible crimes. I wanted to ask you about Article 3, the duress section. And, I'd done, for several years, I was directing training and protocol development for Safe Harbor, the Safe Harbor system in Minnesota, so doing a lot of training related to sex trafficking for law enforcement. And so I'm really intrigued by this. I agree, Superintendent, with what you're saying, that so often people who are experiencing sex trafficking end up being involved in other crimes as a result of that experience. One thing that concerns me about this is just the use of the term duress, which I think generally in the law really does mean that somebody's like, at that moment is having a gun to their head and committing the crime as a result of like being physically forced in that moment. This goes a lot broader than that. And I guess maybe just, maybe it's sort of coercion, but even that doesn't seem like it quite goes far enough, being quite the right term. If you can just talk about the decision to put it into this section and kind of how you're viewing that.
Yep, Superintendent?
Madam Chair and Representative Pinto, really the goal in this, because we found so much support nationally, is to mirror the federal legislation. We'd certainly be open to, further discussions on that. The premise behind it is just what you noted, that individuals that are placed in a position because they're being trafficked, forced into these other crimes, that it allows us to be able to rescue them more readily by not having some of these other crimes hanging over their head, and that they may have been forced into these particular crimes. Certainly would be open to further discussions on that if there's a different way to do this. We are simply mirroring the federal approach.
Okay, thank you.
Representative?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I will want to follow up with you, and just we'll have some further conversations about it, but it's certainly intriguing, and I know these are awful situations for the people involved, and last thing we want to do is put them in an even worse position when already they've been exploited. So thank you for it, and thank you again, Chair Moller.
Representative Engen?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Moller, for bringing this bill. I know that there's a lot of stuff that we disagree with throughout the course of different committees, but this is not one of them, and you've been a champion on this issue. I want to say thank you to Superintendent Evans. One question I do have for you guys: I've seen this stuff starting to pop up on different mediums of online interaction that kids are starting to deal with, whether it's Roblox, Minecraft. You're starting to see this on platforms that otherwise you wouldn't believe that you could ever see it on. Children as young as 5 years old. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you guys have seen and how that's impacted your guys' day-to-day operations in these things, and what we can do to try to get ahead of the curve proactively?
Superintendent?
Madam Chair and Representative Engen, I'll just illustrate that I think illustrated well is in about 2016, we had 1,600 tips into the ICAC task force of child exploitation or suspected child sexual abuse material. We surpassed 21,000 last year, and we're 30% above last year's numbers for what we're seeing come in for tips. And so that is a concern of ours. As more specifically to your question, we have seen, platforms, not to call them out specifically, but as you just noted, Roblox and others. I will note Roblox in particular has implemented a stronger law enforcement team that's working, and I have seen a real concerted and what I would call an earnest effort out of that platform in particular to try to combat that on their platforms. Unfortunately, we have seen so many challenges when it comes to this exploitation of kids online in these platforms that we collectively need to work together. This is a broader discussion, but I would note that you might have seen some of the national 230 protections that are in place for social media companies nationally is something that probably should be examined by Congress, and I think that's our position in law enforcement, that examining some of those protections would really force social media companies into a position where they have to do more to protect that on their platform, not just identify it, but prevent it from occurring.
Sorry, I was just nodding vigorously.
Everybody's nodding.
Representative Engen.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I know we agree with each other on this one. Section 230 is basically a liability shield that a lot of these platforms are hiding behind when it comes to a lot of this disgusting, absolutely despicable behavior. So thank you so much for the information. Thank you, Chair Moller, for what you're doing on this, and I look forward to supporting it.
Any other member discussion? Chair Moller, any closing? Oh, wait, we do. I'm so sorry. I always forget to do that. Chair Novotny.
That's fine. Thank you for bringing this bill. As we said, Superintendent Evans, I know this is something that both sides have wanted to get done for a long time, and I'm glad, it's a sad thing that we have to have these bills. Every provision of this bill is written on a tragedy. Hopefully we can get this through the finish line, and thanks for bringing the bill. I recommend a yes vote.
Thank you. And This time, I will renew my motion to lay over House File 3871 as amended.
All right, next we have House File 3990. It is Chair Novotny's bill. This is the bill we're going to use for the public safety policy package. A list of bills is included in the DE1 Authors Amendment that has been posted on the committee's webpage. It is included in your materials. The DE1 amendment was posted on Friday for the public, so we'll not be taking any formal action on the bill today, but we'll have nonpartisan staff walk through the DE1 amendment and take testimony, and it's our intention to act on the bill at tomorrow's committee hearing on March 25th. Chair Novotny, do you have any comments before we turn it over to nonpartisan?
Yes, Chair Moller, I just have a brief question about the original 3990 bill. I know we have testifiers here from MMB. If we have any questions on that particular provision?
Go ahead.
Well, we're bringing this back. There were some questions about the bill in judiciary, but I believe those have been addressed, satisfactorily addressed.
We're still working on that, I guess.
Okay. With that.
All right, well, we'll turn it over to nonpartisan staff to walk through the DE1 amendment, and it looks like Mr. Diebel's going to start.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. The DE1 amendment brings all the bills listed together. It's not into articles, so it doesn't lend itself to an easy summary that to be shared by Ben and I, but I'm going to go through a sequence of bills, and I'll explain to you who the author is, as well as the sections that they are in the bill, because they're not in sequence, because they amend different sections and would get jumbled when we put them together like this. The first bill is Representative Whitty's House File 3826, which is a BCA bill related to the fraud investigations and addresses administrative subpoenas, definition of identity, and extends the statute of limitations. You'll find those provisions in sections 1, 25, 31, and 39 of the DE amendment. Representative Johnson's House File 3771 is section 2 of the DE amendment, and this language amends the reporting date for the disaster assistance contingency account. Representative Kern has a bill 3769. It's the DOC policy bill related to substance use and TB screening. Those sections are 3 through 5 and 13 through 18 of the DE amendment. Representative Hansen has House File 3453 included in the bill, and this increases the minimum age to possess and sell, well, to possess and for persons to sell to kratom from 18 to 21. And that's section 6 of the DE amendment. And then section 7 through 13 and sections 40 through 42 are another DOC bill related to the licensing of juvenile and adult facilities. That's House File 3768. And then finally, of the sections that I'm addressing, Representative Harder's House File 3496. This requires the Department of Corrections to consider the person's ability to pay restitution before granting them early release eligibility for certain forms of early release. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Johnson. Chair.
Mr. Johnson.
Madam Chair, members, the next bill that is within the DE is House File 3827. That's Representative Duran's bill. This was also a BCA bill specifying that data that the BCA is required to collect must be transmitted in the form that the superintendent prescribes. It also clarifies that certain payments to local law enforcement is treated as a reimbursement, not as a grant, and it requires that notification of orders for protection are provided to law enforcement. Those are in sections 20 through 22, 32, and 42. Representative Novotny's 3990, which is the vehicle for this, is contained in sections 23 and 24. Those are the provisions that allow public employers to determine whether an applicant for an employment who was convicted of a crime has been rehabilitated and whether the person is fit for a particular position. And then it allows the employers to deny employment to certain applicants who were previously convicted of a crime. Representative Rapinski's 3825 is an Office of Justice Programs bill that's related to victim notifications. Those apply in the prosecutor-initiated sentence adjustments, in plea hearings, and also when charges are eligible for automatic expungement. It also protects the identity of minors who are a victim in a case involving the use of minors in sexual performances. Those are in sections 26, 30, and 33 through 37. Representative Schwartz's House File 2169 is Section 27. That bill amends the crime of second-degree murder to include situations where an order for protection existed to prevent the offender from harming the victim, and that order was issued in another jurisdiction. House File 2358 is Representative Van Binsbergen's increase in the penalties for the crime of coercion when the offender threatens to violate the law prohibiting the non-consensual dissemination of private sexual images and the victim sustains death or great bodily harm. That's Section 29. The final bill we're going to be covering here is Representative Moller's House File 3782. This is the provision that requires law enforcement agencies to provide information when an officer deploys chemical irritants, and that's in Section 38. Madam Chair, that finishes our walkthrough.
All right, and we did not have anybody sign up to testify. Do we have any, and I'll just note too, there'll be a number of amendments that are coming tomorrow as well. Like we've been talking about them as far as I know, no surprise amendments. But do members have any questions at this point? I thought you were raising your hand, John. I almost called on you. Chair Novotny, any final comments?
It's a good bill. I hope we pass this out tomorrow.
All right, and with that, members, that today's meeting is adjourned.